Imagine if we were never allowed to leave this room for the rest of our lives. Raise your hand if you'd be totally okay with that. Okay. Now, imagine if besides being in this room, you are subjected to torment and abuse by others for the sake of their entertainment. Every day, you would be living in a world where you're treated like a second-class citizen, and seemingly no one is there to help you. The people who want you to leave are actually arguing that what they're doing is for the benefit of society, and that they're actually doing you a favor by keeping you locked in this room. Raise your hand up if you're still okay with that. See, I don't think any of us wants a scenario for ourselves. So then why do we subject animals to this who can't have a say in it? The treatment of animals in zoos has been an ongoing controversial topic. We're sure that some people here probably have pets at home, or if you don't, you probably love animals in general. So it would make sense that we would want to support movements to help stop animal cruelty, and zoos are no exception. According to the survey that we have passed out, almost everyone in this classroom has been to a zoo, over 89%. Yet only a little over half were aware of the physical and psychological damages done to animals in some zoos. This shows that there's clearly some discrepancy in regards to the awareness of what these animals are truly facing inside zoos. We, the wild ones, chose to talk about the mistreatment of animals in traditional zoos due to our strong connection with them. All of us have visited zoos, such as the Oakland Zoo, many times in our lives, and have seen firsthand the subpar living conditions these animals are subjected to on a daily basis. We have also read articles on animal abuse cases in international zoos, and this pushed us even further to do additional research for this topic. We should stop supporting traditional zoos because the harm they cause to animals outweighs the good they do in our society. Today, we will talk about animal abuse, conservation and breeding of animals in traditional zoos, why we don't need traditional zoos and actually need more reservations, why people might be against abolishing traditional zoos, what it will look like if we do abolish traditional zoos, and what will happen if we don't, and what you can do about this.
Putting animals in traditional zoos is animal cruelty. Traditional zoos cannot provide the amount of space animals have in the wild. This is mainly the case for those species that roam larger distances in their natural habitat. A government-funded study of elephants in UK zoos found that 54% of the elephants show behavioral problems and don't live as long. On the other hand, African elephants in the wild live more than 3 times as long as those kept in traditional zoos. Animals belong in the wild and should not be used for entertainment. Taking into consideration that animals can't control their actions because they are wild. Zookeepers constantly have to punish them in a cruel manner in order for them to stop getting aggressive. However, it is not their fault to act this way, since it's within their instincts to defend themselves when they feel threatened. Some people may say that traditional zoos play a big role in the conservation of threatened species, but unfortunately, the adaptation in captivity causes psychological damage on animals. Stress from inadequate adaptation could lead to suppression of cognitive functioning and increased display of stereotypic behavior. It is thus necessary to measure biological traits like behavior, stress psychology, and contextual factors driving the animals maintained at traditional zoos. In 2016, Times reported in the article Penguins Given Antidepressants that in a UK zoo, humble penguins were put on antidepressants because they were swimming in a deep state of depression. When their routine changes drastically, penguins get anxious and depressed, and makes it hard for them to produce offspring. In the article, in 2014, according to the article, The Elimination of Marius, the giraffe, Eric Cohen explains how a zookeeper killed a giraffe at the Copenhagen Zoo. The reason behind the killing was because the giraffe is not able to produce healthy ovaries to produce offspring. Sadly, Marius was not only killed at 18 months old, but was also turned into lion food because it was considered waste. The emotional lives of animals and ethical aspects of keeping wild animals in captivity should not be taken lightly. Humans can only assume what is good or bad for animals, yet humans don't really know how animals feel and act in the wild. The breeding of animals at traditional zoos is also a big issue. Breeding of animals is primarily to ensure a captive population, not for reintroduction. Captive breeding is considered by some conservation scientists to be a diversion from the reasons for a species decline, giving a false impression that a species is safe so that destruction of habitat and wild populations can proceed. Traditional zoos spend millions on keeping animals confined, while natural habitats are destroyed and animals killed, as there is sufficient funding for protection. In 2013, a 9-month-old lion was considered surplus in Odense Zoo in Denmark. They were concerned that they had too many female lions, so then they offered them to other zoos. See, there were no takers. They were found dead, all inside a freezer. According to BBC, between 3,000 and 5,000 healthy zoo animals are killed in Europe every single year. All traditional zoos enclose animals in captivity and pretend to allow them to practice natural behavior of reproduction, but the truth is that these animals get slaughtered when they are not longer viewed as helpful to the project of coaxing visitors through the gates. Traditional zoos are entrusted to care for animals. That's why they should return all the animals to the wild where they belong.
Okay, so now that we've talked about what kind of abuse goes on in zoos, let's talk about the steps we can take to helping fix this problem. So the first step which needs to happen is all zoos need to close down. This would help stop the abuse, as there'd be no more animals left to be abused inside of the zoos. The next thing which needs to happen is the animals which are in the zoos currently need to go back to their natural habitats or to reservations, somewhere where they are able to live freely and away from all the abuse. Their natural habitats are usually much larger than what they usually are used to inside of zoos. According to the Freedom for Animals, tigers and lions usually have 18,000 times less space than they would like to, and polar bears have 1 million times less space. This is because animals love to roam around and explore, and they have lots of energy, so they need to move around. The next thing is the money and equipment from selling the land and the equipment needs to go to reservations to help create more reservations. It doesn't even have to be money, it can also just be anything. There is a strip landmine with 9,154 acres of land, which was donated by the Ohio Power Company and American Electric Company to the Wilds, a non-profit international organization which is committed to the conservation of wildlife. According to Mother Earth News, the Wilds then turned this giant area of land into the largest wildland complex in North America. A wildland complex is similar to a reservation or an animal sanctuary. The next step which needs to happen is more reservations need to be opened. Animal reservations or animal sanctuaries are a place where animals can live and be protected away from harm and abuse. They're able to ensure that endangered animals are kept alive and are not poached or killed by humans. Zoos sometimes claim to help the preservation of endangered animal species, but in reality, they're not really helping that much, as they only take care of the common animals, which are usually just popular amongst people. Reservations also help nurture abused animals which come from zoos or circuses or other places, and they help them get back to health and then let them roam around and free and be in a protected area. Reservations also help to protect natural habitats which are often destroyed by humans, so they help keep the animals' homes safe. As Steve Irwin once said, "We don't own the planet Earth, we belong to it, and we must share it with our wildlife." Animals which have become dependent on humans, such as ones which have been living in zoos or are part of circuses, They can also get help at reservations or animal sanctuaries by getting aid from humans, but are able to still live a free and happy life away from all the abuse. There may be some people here who may oppose zoos closing down, but there are some reasons, but there's counter reasons to it. One may be that injured animals can be nurtured back to health. The thing is, reservations are also able to do this without keeping the animals there for the rest of their lives after they've helped them. Because often what zoos will do is they'll take the animals, they'll help them back to be healthy, and then they'll keep them there for the rest of their lives. Another thing is conservation efforts by zoos. But as I said earlier, reservations are also able to do this. And also, animals born inside of zoos will spend their entire lives there, and that's not helping the problem. The final reason people may argue is that there's educational and research purposes. With technology, we're able to see everything online and learn everything nowadays. There's nothing we can't find out about online. So for educational purposes, there's the internet. And then if you really, really want to see the animals, you can always just travel there and visit them for yourselves in person and going to their natural habitat instead of them bringing them here. Another reason, or the next reason, is reservations are able to do research on animals while they're free to do whatever they want. According to the nutritive value of Zaljavat grassland at the Zasavika Reservation, they are doing research on the best type of food to feed grazing cattle. These are just some of the reasons. These are just some of the steps we can take to ending the abuse.
If traditional zoos are abolished, the focus will be put onto something we call the unzoo. John Coe, the inventor of the unzoo, is a legendary zoo designer who invented the Zoo 360 concept in Philadelphia. Zoo 360 is a concept of a zoo where rather than caging the animals, they're free to roam and the humans enter their own environment in their own cage, so to speak. According to Justin Moreland's article titled The Future of Zoos, the top zoos Coe believes will evolve into something he calls the unzoo. This turns upside down the traditional approach of bringing animals to humans and instead brings humans to the animals. The unzoo will reverse the setup, giving animals the space to roam and bringing humans into the animals' environment. Some institutions have already adopted this concept of the unzoo, such as the Sedgwick County Zoo. Justin Moreland also mentioned in his article that that's exactly what they're trying to do in Wichita, Kansas, where visitors to the Sedgwick County Zoo can now ride in a boat to see a 5-acre exhibit full of elephants. According to Moreland, the boat ride breaks down the barrier between animals and humans while giving the elephants the room to roam free. This gives protection to the people visiting the zoo, eliminating any chance of any kids sticking their hands into the enclosure or even on rare occasions falling in. By the same token, this offers more protection to the animals. We all remember Harambe. He was a western lowland gorilla who lived at the Cincinnati Zoo. His life was taken because a toddler fell into his enclosure. In a panic, the zoo decided to shoot and kill him, which could have been avoided if zoos were abolished in the first place. Another example of this is Safari West in Santa Rosa. This establishment has 400 acres that's completely the animals' domain. Species ranging from lions to giraffes to zebras can live just as they would in the wilds, and people are allowed to take tours of the park instead of staring at them through a cage. In Churchman's article, The Educational Role of Zoos, a Synthesis of the Literature, he describes the important roles that zoos play in educating the public about animals and even global warming. This concept of the unzoo has all of the benefits of a normal zoo, such as educating kids about animals, educating the public about new discoveries with animals, and even tending to endangered and injured species. Establishments such as this one have a high respect for the animals as well as for their mental health. The fact that people have the chance to get so close, as you can see here with the giraffe, it's pretty much touching the people. It's just icing on the cake. Now, if traditional zoos are not abolished, according to Churchman, the nearly 800,000 animals that are held captive will continue to be held captive and abused. Zoos will continue to keep innocent animals in habitats that are simply not fit for them. In Maynard's article titled Media Framing of Zoos and Aquaria from Conservation to Animal Rights, it states that in most cases the habitats are far too small. This deprives the animals of the necessary exercise that they need, leading them to feel deprived and cooped up. Most of the time, when you go to a zoo, you tend to see the animals laying down rather than frolicking in their environment. As you can see here, this is what a hippo should look like in the wild, and this is what it actually looks like in a zoo most of the time. And then on the other side, those bears have a little bit more space, but still not what they should have. Many animals that are kept in zoos are pack animals, meaning that they constantly need to be with others of their species in order to thrive. Despite this, animals are still often caged alone and by themselves for long periods of time, which deprives them of any social interaction with their species. This often leads to psychological problems, the most common being depression. All of these facts make it very clear zoos are inhumane. Animals were not created to be put behind walls or behind cages 24/7 and watched. They belong in the wild with the freedom to follow their noses wherever it may take them. According to Maynard, Robert Brault once said, "The only creature on earth whose natural habitat is a zoo is the zookeeper." Now that you have visualized a world with and without traditional zoos, Mohammed will now discuss what we talked about today.
So, in conclusion, today we have talked about animal abuse, conservation and breeding of animals in traditional zoos, why we don't need traditional zoos and need more reservations, why people might be against abolishing traditional zoos, what it will look like if we do abolish traditional zoos, what will happen if they are not abolished, and what you can do about this. Traditional zoos clearly do not have the rights and welfare of the animals as their utmost priority. And although in some cases zoos do actually help animals, they usually cause more harm than good, which is why everyone should stop supporting traditional zoos. Now that you have all been informed about the dangers and abuse animals face living in traditional zoos, we hope that we were able to open your eyes to this appalling matter, and hopefully that one day we can refer to traditional zoos as a thing of the past. All hope is not lost for these animals. You can help them by supporting modern zoos such as Zoo 360 mentioned previously in our speech. You can also help them by supporting reservations as they're able to actually take care of the animal properly without long-term damage. We would like to end this speech with a quote from Brainy Quotes by Peter Singer, who is an Australian philosopher and a co-founder of an animal protection organization. Attempts to defend amusement parks and circuses on the grounds that they educate people about animals should not be taken seriously. Such enterprises are a part of the entertainment industry. The most important lesson that they teach to impressionable young minds is that it is acceptable to keep animals in captivity for human amusement. Thank you.